This Rise and Shine podcast series has been made possible by the generosity of the Zeidelman Family Foundation, which is committed to the unity and continuity of the Jewish people through meaningful and relevant Jewish education and wisdom.
Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotz once said, "There's nothing so whole as a broken heart." Or, as Leonard Cohen put it, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
This is Rise and Shine, a podcast that offers timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations to fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note. Here is Adrienne Gold-Davis.
In May, I did another Momentum Mobilizes Unity mission to Israel. About 150 men and women joined in a week of service and taking action, bearing witness, and learning. And even though it was my fourth such mission since October 7th, the level of intensity had not diminished for me. While I'd expected that what I'd seen and heard 3 times already before would not have the same impact on my soul, somehow this time it was even more intense, more disturbing. You see, I had this erroneous notion in my head that the more one's exposed to something, the less impactful and core-shaking it would be. And yet, as I discovered, the human heart can be broken and devastated repeatedly without ever diminishing the emotional impact. And I wanted to understand why this was so. Why or what was it that prevented that scar tissue over my heart from providing a buffer for the horror? And what was it this time that was the brand new trigger? So the theme of the trip is the concept of being both broken and whole. And it's a fitting metaphor for the Israeli experience these days as our country is still at war. On this, the 4th time I'd been to visit the kibbutzim and the Nova Festival site, I really did think it would be easier to take. And yet, the opposite was true. Because this time, when I was at these sites of horror, the jacaranda trees were in full bloom, those vibrant purple boughs swaying in the breeze. And even the cactus plants were blossoming, brand new, prickly, bright green shoots with red flowers emerging from last year's growth. Cactus plants that were still covered with soot and sand persisting nevertheless. Flowers and grass and blankets of blossoms lined the path, and the weather was extraordinary, warm and breezy and temperate. But that stood in stark contrast to the desiccated homes, burnt beyond recognition, filled with bullet holes and grenade scars, tricycles turned over in the same spot as they were left, sukkahs still standing frozen in the moment that time stood still, the last day of the holiday on Simchat Torah. And they were empty. You see, the kibbutz was exquisite in a way that I couldn't appreciate before spring had sprung in the Gaza envelope, and horrifying in the fact that everything but nature and her seasons had frozen in time. You know, sometimes I find nature perplexing. Its stubborn insistence of enduring and reblooming even when we stay stuck in the nuclear winter of our heart and soul. Seeing these tragic locations full of blossoming spring made me remember going to my own father's funeral. I remember that day was so spectacular that I felt mocked by the sunshine surrounding his grave. And it's not irony. It's actually the reality of life itself. You see, man plans and God laughs, and our inner worlds are not always accurately depicted in the outer world's manifestations. You know, another example of how things can be broken and whole at the same time, this is one of them. Our job then is to hold those often contradictory paradigms side by side, like the ark in the traveling sanctuary that we call the Mishkan. You see, the Mishkan was the ark that we carried as we wandered in the desert, which ultimately came home to Israel and became the centerpiece of the temple. So this Mishkan carried both the whole tablets and the broken ones containing the Torah that the Jews received at Sinai. Remember that first set? Remember when Moses smashes it, when he sees the people dancing and worshiping around a golden calf idol? And then he goes back up the mountain to get forgiveness for his people, and he returns on what would be Yom Kippur Day, the Day of Atonement, with a second set. You know, I've heard that expression, the Day of Atonement, said differently, said as the Day of At-One-ment. Because forgiveness can repair so much in this world. Well, those tablets, the broken and the whole ones, they sat side by side, even touching, and we carried them on our journey through the desert. It's not just a metaphor or a literal depiction. It actually teaches us reality. Something or someone can be both broken and whole at the same time. Which one will you focus on? Many people I have loved have suffered unimaginable losses, and the pain of those losses, they never disappear entirely. Rather, they sit side by side in the arcs of their hearts, and they have to try and choose every waking minute which set of tablets they're focusing on. And they understand what Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotz once said. He said, "There's nothing so whole as a broken heart." Or, as Leonard Cohen put it, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. When we move through the world, allowing ourselves the humanity to be both broken and whole at the same time, we soon see that while the things we look at, the things we read, the things we do may be the same, we are not the same. This is reflected in the fact that Jews read the same Torah week after week, year after year, decade after decade, but always find something we didn't notice before, because while the words may be the same words, we are not the same readers. Before the jacaranda purple trees exploded in beauty, I had missed the contrast between a blooming spring day and the dark dormancy of the destruction. It was the contrast that served to remind me that our hostages are still not back, that our soldiers are still in danger, that our country is still at war. We are at the threshold of another season. This week, can you take another look at that which you have seen many times before, but this time with fresh eyes? Can you look for what's different, even within what appears at first glance to be the same? Because nothing is ever the same, not you, not anyone. As we welcome summer, let's pray even harder for the return of our hostages and the end of war. May the heat be a reflection of our passion for life and a pathway to repair. Am Yisrael Chai.
Thanks for listening to Rise and Shine. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Momentum Podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join Adrienne again next time for more timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations that fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note.
This podcast was sponsored by the Zeidelman Family Foundation. Spread the wisdom. Inspire Jewish individuals around the globe by supporting Momentum's podcasts. To sponsor, contact podcast@momentumunlimited.org. You're listening to a Momentum podcast. For unlimited inspiration, wisdom, and empowerment, visit momentumunlimited.org.